right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to a session on digital displays and video walls for corporate productivity in the enterprise. My name is Daniel Griffin. I'm with Userful, and I'm here to share with you and with my colleagues here a case study about video walls in the enterprise for corporate productivity. And with me is Ajoy Bhattacharya, who is the Senior Director of Innovation and Technology with Suffolk. And to his right is John Mitton, the CTO and VP of AV for Red Thread. Red Thread is the integrator, Userful is the manufacturer, and Suffolk is the customer. And we'll be discussing with you the case study of Suffolk's use nationwide of a series of video walls in their smart labs. So this will be a conversation as well as a presentation. We'll save some time at the end for questions, and sort of feel free to sort of prepare those as you go, because by hearing questions at the end, we feel really good about all we've done here. We know you've paid attention and been engaged. So take that as your cue to plan out what you might want to ask. So this is the case study, Suffolk and how they're revolutionizing buildings, the way they're designed and built, and how technology plays a role in that. So what I wanted to do for my part here is set the stage a little bit in terms of corporate productivity and digital displays. And then we're going to sort of shift through things. Ajoy will speak a little bit, and I'll talk a bit about the product itself. John will talk a bit about the integrator's perspective. But let me take a moment to sort of set the stage in terms of what we're talking about. In terms of displays and corporate productivity, the first tools used in terms of displays and productivity were, of course, the displays on the desktop, the monitor screens. If you cast your minds back that far into the 80s when it started to have screens on every desk, that was a huge boost in terms of productivity of individuals within corporations. There's another wave that came more recently, of course, and those are the displays that are in our pockets. So mobile devices revolutionized the way people work. There's another change going on now in terms of productivity and how displays are used as tools. But those displays aren't the ones on your desktop or the ones in your pocket. Not that those aren't important and still being used, of course, but companies have been deploying video walls and large format displays for productivity uses as well. And that's what we're going to talk about, how video walls and large format displays are used inside organizations to increase operational efficiencies and productivity. So let's talk about a few of the ways that digital displays and video walls are being used to transform workplaces. I've got a series of examples. I'll sort of go through them here, and then we'll talk a bit about specific applications, and then we'll talk, of course, about how Suffolk is actually using video walls and digital displays. So the first example is customer engagement. People are putting up video walls and displays in lobbies and atriums to welcome customers as they come into a building. I always say there's no second chance to make a good first impression, and video is part of that. So having displays out there to attract attention, to engage with customers. This is a type of corporate communication and digital signage, of course. Also customer demo displays. We're finding a lot of people putting up displays and video walls to bring customers in and use them to present material, whether it's PowerPoints, videos, and so on. And we'll talk a bit about how Suffolk's doing exactly that. The next one down there is corporate communication. And so a lot of companies are wanting to use displays to communicate internally. Couple of facts that I'm sure you're all familiar with. The amount of email people are getting these days make that a very difficult way to get your message across internally. By sending out company emails, how many people actually read them? What those responsible for internal communication with organizations are finding is they need to find multiple channels to communicate. That's the same with any marketing, of course. And so the need for using displays within the office to share information, key messages is important. Just counting on email alone isn't enough anymore. So it's methods for promoting company culture and so on, as well, of course, as entertainment. Two more slides about ways in which companies are using video walls and digital displays to increase productivity. Collaboration, so obviously meeting rooms, huddle rooms, conference rooms. There's an interesting graph that Cisco put out recently. It's not included in this deck, and I'm kind of regretting that now, but it shows the Cisco's tracking and predicting the increase in video traffic within the network. And there are two sides to the graph. One is mobile and one is fixed. And both of them are increasing, but fixed is increasing much faster. So the video traffic across fixed networks is dramatically increasing. And that's because video is really the medium of communication today. People are using video, and that's the way, if you look at millennials and younger generations, people really engage. They engage most with video. That's the method of communication, and that's one of the reasons inside these fixed networks that video is increasing. And a lot of that is, within corporations, is driven by things like video conferencing. That's extraordinarily common, whether it's on your desktop or whether it's in a meeting room. But having collaboration meeting rooms and being able to pull up your video conference as well as other materials is a great way to use digital displays within the company. Data and information sharing for decision making. We live in an information age, and there's more and more data and information coming up. Every product out there has a dashboard, and you've got so many dashboards, it's hard to keep track of them all. So much data, how do you actually process it? Well, of course, one way is visually, and so putting up dashboards, kicking KPIs, key information points, then putting them up onto displays and video walls is one way to communicate. So you want to share with your team how everyone's doing, whether it's sales or production, whether it's marketing. Everybody's got a data method to share, and digital displays are a great way to put that information up, share it, communicate it, make sure people know it. But of course, there's other things that other organizations are using these kind of displays in similar ways for social media centers, for example, where they want to put social media information up on digital displays and have somebody keeping an eye on that. What we're finding in a lot of organizations is that they want everyone to keep an eye on data sources and information, but it can't all be on the desktop. Desktops are still used for productivity applications, and to crowd those with situational awareness KPIs, so what's going on within the company, is too much. So what they want to do is put those sorts of things on large displays or video walls around the office and allow people to stay working on their task-oriented work on their desktop, but be able to keep an eye on what's going on through the large format displays. That's another key area, data for information sharing and decision making. A couple more examples of how displays are used for productivity. Process automation, so manufacturing on the factory floor, engineering, testing labs, again, places where people need to be communicated with, but you got to keep displays on unusual spaces. So think of the factory floor. Displays can't crowd around where people are working. They need to be raised up so that they're out of the way of manufacturing, and yet they need to be then large enough that they can be seen from everywhere. So another great example. And then rapid decision making, so control rooms, operation centers, and so on, media walls, places where people need to make quick decisions and need information at their fingertips, live real-time information. So again, large format displays and video walls are vital there. So there I've covered some of the applications for large format displays and video walls inside corporations. And again, we're going to start looking at a very specific case study, but I wanted to sort of lay the groundwork and give you a bit more information about how we see, that's sort of Userful's perspective, displays being deployed in the enterprise to increase operational efficiency. But one of the things I also wanted to point out is that this wave of digital displays for operational efficiencies is going on all over the world and is recognized by the markets as an important step in terms of productivity. So this is a specific example. Some of you may remember August 2018, McDonald's announced they were going to invest $6 billion in digital displays. And that was big news at the time. If some of you remember it, you might not remember that shortly after that, their stock was upgraded, and that was because the markets were reacting to this investment in digital displays. Now, those displays are used for a variety of things, not just operational efficiencies inside McDonald's, but the plan was for customer engagement and other things as well. But there was a wide variety of uses McDonald's had planned for different types of digital displays within their organization. And shortly after that, Guggenheim upgraded their stock having looked at their plan. So that's one example of companies that are investing in digital displays, and also an example of how the markets react. So I've got a couple more slides just about setting the stage here for the conversation we're going to have. And one of them is about the opportunities and challenges for AV and IT within this space. So we've talked a bit about the opportunities, of course, increasing productivity and better communication, operational efficiency, and so on. I've explained those in some of those specific case studies, but what are the challenges then? And this comes in some ways in terms of question of whether you apply a point solution or a single solution for many use cases within the enterprise. But let me talk a bit about the challenges that those of us at Userful looking at this market for a long time see. One obvious one is scalability, right? So you need solutions that are going to be able to scale with you as you grow, and so ensuring that something isn't just for one use, but can be used across the organization, across all the offices. Security is another one. We hear this one all the time. You're going to put something on your network. You're going to pull it in. Obviously, any organization is going to want to do security checks and tests and certifications. That is an increasing concern in an age where security is topmost in mind. So this is another consideration. If you're going to roll out $6 billion worth of display technology, you need to also ensure that you're choosing solutions with enterprise-level security. Next question is CapEx and OpEx and how to minimize each. Now, the question of whether you're choosing a solution that's a subscription-based solution and moves all into operational expenses versus CapEx and so on, those are complicated decisions to make, but there are solutions out there, again, some of them that are subscriptions, some of them that are strictly hardware-based and license-based, and that will affect those decisions. Global management and support is another consideration, a solution that's able to be deployed enterprise-wide, whether that's nationwide, as in the case of Suffolk, or something that's actually global, a consideration worth looking at. And so then the question becomes whether to choose a solution that is point solution, a series of point solutions. So I listed off about 6 examples of how digital displays and video walls are used within the enterprise for increased productivity. Do you deploy 6 different solutions? Do you choose a solution that can address all 6 of those points? So there are platforms now that are, talk about a visual networking platform that are able to address within one platform all of those use cases we've just discussed. And what we're going to do now is start looking at a case study of one of those particular use cases. We'll get into more of this question of whether what you need is a point solution that does just one thing, and then you're going to have to deploy, say, 5 or 6 of them to address all those different requirements, or a single solution that's able to address all of those use cases and requires only going through your security checklist once, and then of course it's more easy to scale and centrally manage. So that, I think, is where I'm going to turn this over to Ajoy from Suffolk. I've spent a bit of time sort of laying the groundwork, and now we'll dive into a specific case study about how video walls are being used by Suffolk to increase productivity.
Thank you.
With that, over to you, Ajoy.
Thank you. Good morning. As Dan mentioned, my name is Ajoy Bhattacharya, Senior Director of Innovation and New Technology at Suffolk. Suffolk's a construction company, one of the largest out of the Northeast. We're Boston-based, headquartered in Boston. We have offices all over the country. We are a national company. And about $3 billion in annual revenue, 150 plus active construction sites, 10 offices across the country. And really, our goal is to really change the construction experience, right? All the way from the customer experience to the construction process to the way we even treat our employees. So highly focused on changing the construction experience. And for those who don't know much about the construction industry, it's kind of a little bit of a backward industry from a technology standpoint, right? We can still build buildings the way we did them 75 years ago. So Suffolk is one of those companies that is pushing on the technologies, pushing the envelope. So over the last 2 years, I have been involved in, as part of pushing that envelope, building Suffolk's innovation labs, what we call our smart labs. It's meant to be a collaborative environment, right, where people can bring ideas to the table, share different technology ideas, test, pilot, experiment different technologies. The idea being that how do we build faster, better, with higher quality, and increase the employee morale and the community morale. The smart labs are a very key component of our operations. It really, we try to define our operation excellence through them. There's one per office in the regions. So when we built out these labs, when we were going through the process, we said, okay, we want to build out these video walls. And when we were thinking about what do we want them to do, so we wanted to make sure that they were they were in line and aligned to our Build Smart initiative, right? How do you build faster? How do you build with less errors? How do you build before schedule? Things like that. So we felt, when you walk into one of these smart labs, it's all about collaboration, right? So when teams come in there to talk about their different their projects, they have the equipment, they have the technologies to really collaborate. When you walk into these labs, the other thing we also wanted was for people to understand that we are a national company. Suffolk is very well known in the Northeast, especially in Boston, but a lot of people may not know we are a national company, so that was something that we were focused on as well. We wanted to be able to show content from any source, anywhere, anytime, be able to manage it from anywhere too, and have multi-level access, right? So some people may want to be administrators, some people just viewers, etc. And of course, cost is always a question. So the solution that we, after doing a lot of research, we partnered with both Userful and Red Thread. And what we ended up with 2 years later, 7 smart labs, innovation labs in our offices. When you walk in, you will see displays from job site videos, live videos shown on these on this array of TVs, and I'll show you some pictures in the next few slides. They definitely position Suffolk as a national brand, but it has some other benefits to it too. We can obviously interact with the content. We can also see 3D renderings on it, be able to present to it, to use that as part of a presentation screen, be collaborative with it. We're able to monitor KPIs, and and what we see a lot of times, our GMs, our CEOs, they'll come in there, they'll put up their metrics, and they're having their meetings, and they can quickly get to their data real time, and that's very powerful to run efficient meetings. And we are also able to control the content given with a laptop, real time, literally. So you can see these are some pictures from our labs. The two on the left-hand side are from Los Angeles, our LA office. At the bottom left, you can see somebody actually manipulating an iPad on the wall that's changing the images. And those are some live images that you see on the screen there. Part of it is, safety is embedded in our culture, so we want to be able to see if there are people following our safety procedures. So this comes in very handy, and we've had incidences where we've caught somebody who was not being ultra safe, and we've called it in. So it's helped us with that. On the right-hand side, you see our smart lab on the top of One Penn Plaza in New York City. The 3x3 video wall over there is actually what we have, and you can see the top 4 TVs are mosaicked into one, showing some KPIs. The right 3 TVs is actually a big, long report. So you can see the flexibility of the video wall and what the platform can do for you, right? You can have it shaped in any way depending on how we want to look at data. At the bottom, you're also seeing a gentleman over there with the virtual reality headsets. We use virtual reality a lot for our construction experience. So this is a picture of him showing some clients the use of virtual reality, putting it up so that everybody can look at something, look at clashes within the drawings or anything like that, or even try to change different facades if they so feel. But that's the power of the collaboration that we can do in the lab. And at the end of the day, the results, so we have the showcase videos, the live camera feeds. We are able to demonstrate that we are a national brand. We are able to pull up pictures of buildings that we construct from across the country. We are able to look at these live feeds in real time and be able to monitor what's going on and really help the safety and thus help the morale also at the construction sites. I'll give it back to Daniel.
Thanks, Ajoy. That's great. So I know some of you are wondering why I'm coming up to speak again, and John hasn't spoken at all yet, but that's because I was first just setting the stage. Now I'm going to talk from the manufacturer's point of view, and John's our closer. He's going to come in at the end and wrap it all up.
Don't worry about it. I'm fine.
So what I wanted to talk about to this slide, just briefly, is the product itself that we're discussing here that's running those video walls. And you can see in that diagram how it's set up. So I'm going to try and skip back and forth between two slides. This sort of explains the architecture, and this is the diagram itself. But what we do at Userful is all standards-based. So you use a standard PC or server. It's commercial, off-the-shelf hardware, so there's nothing proprietary involved. And then we use the network and software. So it's really part of this AV over IP revolution that's making it easier, more cost-effective to deploy AV solutions. So our software runs on that single PC server, connects through a standard network to each of the displays. Each of the displays has a small zero-client receiver on the back of it, and that then connects through HDMI to the displays themselves. And through that, you can put any content on them that you need to. So you can see at the bottom of the slide, there's a variety of content sources. The other thing you can see in the bottom right-hand corner is the management side of it. It can be managed through the cloud or through the local area network, as it says in that illustration. So this is a way to ensure that you can get any source onto any video wall or part of a video wall at any time and in real time. And you can interact with those sources. We've got an API for more advanced interaction. What we're about is ensuring simplicity, ease of use, and affordability, a low total cost of ownership as well. And we're doing that by embracing standard computing architecture. And again, this helps with the security piece as well, because instead of buying a proprietary piece of hardware, which you've then got to put through all security checks, if you're getting a PC or server from Lenovo or HP, you know that's all got a standard BIOS and everything else. And if you're using your network, you can lock it down and run your network just as, run all the security pieces on your network you need. It doesn't do anything outside of what you're currently using for your existing network. So again, this is key to how to ensure that you're addressing the requirements of the enterprise as you step in, security, scalability, global management. On the global management front, one of the things that, and Ajoy's touched on this, is Suffolk headquarters is able to centrally control and schedule content and so on, but also each office has a degree of control as well, and they're able to connect their laptops and put up content as well. So it's that blend of local control and central control, and the way we handle that is through a cloud management option that layers on top of each of those sites a central control. And so each of those Userful servers calls back to the cloud service running on Amazon Web Services, and through that you're able to centrally manage, control all the deployments and the content and what's being used across them. But of course, you can have local control as well, so that each site is able to interact and control with the content as well. So you've got that blend of local interaction and control with central control from headquarters as well. And so there's some level of balance between the two, or all of one or all of the other. It doesn't matter to us. Obviously, Suffolk chooses their own balance as needed. So that's the piece about the product, and now I am going to turn it over to our closer, John, who's going to talk a bit about the integrator's perspective.
Ooh, just lost my pack. Good morning. I got a couple of questions. Let me give you a little bit about Red Thread. Red Thread is a wholly owned subsidiary of Steelcase. Is everyone here familiar with Steelcase? It's the largest world's manufacturer of office environments. At one time, we called it office furniture, but now it does much more. We do, obviously furniture. I run the AV group, which is all the technology. We have raised walls, demountable walls, but it's all about workplace transformation. And that's one of the big things that's going on in the workplace is transformation. And I think video walls and communications, some of the things that Daniel was talking about, play a major role in that. Is how do you get an organization to move and change? So video walls are becoming a staple of practically every project we're doing. I just did a project, there were 8 video walls in the project. I remember a time in the day when we started back in 2004 in the AV business. We kind of gauged a big project if there was a video wall in it. We got excited. It's like, wow, we're doing a video wall. Look how great this is. But now it's a staple. And it's almost like there's a war going on in the marketplace between companies. They have the biggest, brightest video walls out there. But by doing that, that's also driving demand for people to have good content, because that's one of the things that people forget about when they do video walls. It's great to have that beautiful, you create a 1-minute, 2-minute video, you display it, it looks awesome. By the 100th time you've seen it, it's boring. By the 500th time, it's sickening. So what you really need to do is you need to be creating a content or a whole strategy around how are you going to support video walls. And that's where Userful comes in. Because it really does, you have to explain to people about the importance of content, and then you have to have the flexibility to do it quickly. A lot of times people would go ahead, put content together for video wall, and they just let it sit there for days on end. And that is, to me, a fool's errand. You've made this nice investment in a video wall, but it's just not really providing the impact that you want, or leveraging the whole capability of what that video wall can do. And some of the things that you address as far as KIPs, corporate communication, customer engagement are all very important things. So if you don't have a simple way of doing that and ability to control it and manage it, it's a fool's errand. So I think it's an interesting area that we're getting into right now. One of the big insights that we're also seeing, in addition to the move towards video walls being a big part of every AV implementation, is there's a battle going on right now in the workplace, or most companies. Who's running and managing the AV projects? So, little participation. How many people here are AV integrators? Okay. The rest end users, I assume? How many people are in IT, an end user organization? Okay. So I'm glad to see you here. Over the past, obviously most of the AV projects were managed by the facilities group. But as more and more of AV content is putting AV over IP, we're spending much more time with IT. Now, a little bit of my background. My background is IT. I was hired by Red Thread to be their CIO, and I managed their internal IT organization. Prior to that, I worked for International Paper. I was a regional IT manager for a $4 billion region and had close to 150 people underneath me. So if you talk to any IT person, the big concern they have is support. How are you going to support your install? Because I've never met an IT person that says, I have more than enough support people to do my daily work. There's never enough people, and there's always more issues. So when we start talking to them about moving to a solution video that's going to run on the corporate network, that's going to go forward and drive the corporate communication, their initial reaction is, not on my network, and who's going to support it? And it also secure. Right, Ajoy?
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's a good example right here, convert. But how do you support it? So it's one of the big things, but then you have the real estate people and marketing and corporate communication that wants the big wow factor. So that's one of the big things that we need to be looking at is how do we go ahead and bring facilities, marketing, human resources, which is another big part of this conversation, and IT together and make it. So I think the nice thing about Userful is you were talking about the 0 clients. It reduces points of failure. So you're able to go in and you're able to create a solution. You're able to manage it in the cloud. We're all moving towards purchasing AV as a service or to a monthly reoccurring cost that you can now budget your costs better. And this is very consistent with the way that IT wants to purchase. So it's aligned right now very well with what's going on in the marketplace as far as moving forward with Videowalls. So one of the big problems, though, is people have a tendency to look around and get excited over certain displays they've seen or screens, and they jump to a conclusion. So we try to spend a lot of time working with our end users, trying to really ferret out what is it that their end goal is, and also making sure we're building in the flexibility so they can expand. Because too often, the other side of that is customers want all of this, and they get overwhelmed. On the other side, you get people that only want a small narrow. We'll just use a PowerPoint presentation, and then they're really disappointed. So we have to spend a lot of time with people understanding their requirements and show them the potential that's there, but then to grow and give them steps along the way so that they get to finally where they have a full solution in place. Trying to do this on day one usually doesn't work, and trying to do this over time doesn't work. So that's one of our balances, is trying to ferret out understanding the requirements and then going ahead and translating that into the right requirements that we need far as a wall. Is it really just a large display that we're able to use a windowing feature and put different windows on? Is that suffice? Or is it really a 3x3 LCD video wall, and we use multiple windows, and we use the displays like Ajoy, you do a 2x2, wrapping it around with content all around, which works for your environment? Or is it an LED, which is really the next place as prices are going down, the pitches are becoming much smaller, they're about to expand. So it's really neat to be able to understand that, and then making sure we're working with their HR and marketing people on the communication message that's going forward, and then blending that all together in a final solution. So the other concern that in the past, video walls were very singular. Everyone had a video wall, and they managed it independently. They had a solution in the lobby. They maybe had one on the manufacturing floor. They may have had one in the Knox Center, but each one was driven differently. And then when you start adding the geographic spread of a company like Suffolk that has multiple locations, it's now becoming a corporate-wide, multi-location tool that needs to be managed. And that's also, from an integrated point of view, is challenging for us because we have to make sure we can implement a consistent experience across multiple facilities. John Fish, the president of Suffolk, expects, demands, and he's a demanding guy,
Yep.
that he can walk into any of his facilities at any moment, walk into the Innovation Center, and be able to bring with any customer and drive a presentation and have the exact same experience regardless of what's going on. And I think he can do it.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, I'd be hearing it, for sure. So, it's important that you go ahead, but that also means we're making sure that when we're doing the implementation, We're very detailed oriented. We're making sure that we're planning out not just the software side, but also the physical install. And we have a very good partners throughout the country that we work with. So a lot of detailed planning up front, how you're going to implement the project, how you're going to do the handover, the training, and consistency are all important. So those are just a few observations, considerations that we do when we go forward when we're looking at putting a video wall project across the board.
So this last slide, I think John and I will probably do together and talk a bit about positioning video walls and digital displays for success in the enterprise. And so maybe we can both talk about a few different points, and this is just prepping you guys up for your questions once we're finished. But one of the things I wanted to hear your thoughts on is how you present total cost of ownership. For us at Userful, total cost of ownership is something we're often talking about, and that has a conversation both about upfront costs, but also about the ongoing costs. And John, you've touched on a couple of points about central management and support, IT always wanting support. Ajoy, maybe you want to get in on some of these as well, but share with me your thoughts on how, as an integrator, when you're talking to a customer, you present the concepts of total cost of ownership and how that conversation goes.
Well, it's interesting because it goes back to who controls the money. If it's tied to a upgrade or a facility, a major restack or a new build out, a lot of that is in the CapEx project, and is controlled really by the construction project team, all the facilities, and they're all geared towards getting the project done and not really thinking of the total cost of ownership. And they're just like, just buy it.
Yeah.
And then when we talk to the IT organizations, they're all about, well, the support. And so what we're trying to do quite a bit now is to say, look, move that away from the CapEx project. Because now when you have it on a monthly recurring fee and we're providing a service, we can actually have much more flexibility. You may have wanted a video wall, and all you could afford in your CapEx project was a LCD solution. But if we move it to a monthly reoccurring fee, and you now spread that over a period of time, now maybe you can afford an LED and get a better experience for the end users and for the customers, and then you're able to introduce a better way of managing it, rather than, well, all we can afford is CapEx. I don't have a budget to do the operating expense long term, so we're going to settle on this solution, even though it may not be, and it's a hardware-based solution, may not be the best solution for the customer long term.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that we are now offering video walls as a service.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it, and you're engaging me to provide that information, and we'll work with your content providers. But it's moving away from the CapEx and the free, and it's because people want flexibility. Yeah. The video wall today is great, but 2 years from now, you may want something much different.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that we've certainly seen is things change so rapidly that your requirements for today will shift in the future. And, Ajoy, do you want to talk about total cost of ownership and how that's seen from a customer perspective when you think about?
Yeah. I mean, I think John said something very critical earlier, which is think about the content. Content creation can take a lot of resources, a lot of time and effort, and people. We think about the infrastructure of a video wall, the platforms that's driving it, but the actual content itself is a consideration in that equation. The security and scalability, I think, is just as important. Security is something that is always changing. It's a tough thing to keep up with. Much like John, I actually started at Suffolk as the head of IT infrastructure and security, so I'm very close to that, and I don't know if there's ever enough that you can do with security to keep yourself secure, right? You can always put more barriers, but I would be hard-pressed to say that I'm 100% feeling good about my security. It's something you always worry about.
Right, you can't get complacent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. one of the other points up here is just this question of central management tools and diagnostics and so on. We've talked a bit about that. I think we've each got our own perspective and shared a few of the thoughts, but let's turn over for that same sort of discussion in terms of, I'll share the sort of perspective from Userful and you get the integrator and the customer perspective, but that central management point is, anytime you're bringing something to IT, they're going to say, okay, how do I manage this through the cloud? How am I able to access this from everywhere? I mean, we talked about used to in the IT department have a team of 150 people under you, and now, I mean, that's just we're running things on the slimmest possible number of staff, and things do need to be click of a mouse simple, but also manageable from anywhere. And certainly from Userful's point of view, that's the way we build things, is to be managed globally and centrally and across all of them. But let's go to John and then to Ajoy. John, like when you come up to a customer and you're talking about those sort of central management, are you finding people just get it and know quickly, or are you finding some people are still thinking, no, I'll just hack around things locally here and don't really need the global perspective?
No, that speaks to IT. I mean, they're used to be able to use Intune and other different tools to manage the desktops, and so they're all on board on that. Yeah. It speaks to them. Their big concern then is security. We're back. I always go back to security, but it always, okay, now you're going to do that. How are you going to assure that you're not letting in any of the bad stuff? So people are on board for that. And then on top of it, it's hard to prove an ROI on a video wall. What is it doing for you? So to be able to come back with some key measurements about how much time is up, how much time is being used locally for presentations versus pushing of corporate content. So being able to go back and give them some tools to show how the wall's being used has helped quite a bit to people to say, okay, this is worth the investment that we're making. And video walls have been as I talked about previously, when people just use PowerPoint and consistent displays, it kind of got a bad rap. Like, okay, they were excited, and I'm like, well, we did that and really was boring. Now you go say, hey, by doing this and be able to measure it, you're able to get much more out of your wall and make it work harder for you.
Yeah. Ajoy, do you want to talk about ROI? Because obviously, these are productivity tools, and it's not just showing a pretty presentation, although it is. I know I've seen some of them. They do look stunning, and hopefully everyone saw the pictures there. But what's the ROI conversation inside Suffolk like when they talk about video walls and the smart labs?
Right. So I think there are hard costs and soft costs, right? There are the things that sometimes you can't measure. A customer comes in, a client comes in, and says, "Oh wow, I didn't realize Suffolk is building a guitar-shaped hotel in Florida, up in
right down the street from here
in Hollywood, the Hard Rock, right? Beautiful hotel." And they look at that and like, "Oh wow, that's what's happening." And you can see literally the neck of the hotel coming up. You're looking at the Encore Casino in Massachusetts, some beautiful buildings around the country, and when they look at that, and we've literally gotten emails from clients, prospective clients, to our CEOs saying, "I now understand what you're doing in the smart labs." That's part of helping winning the deal, kind of thing. I'll also say Suffolk has a very lean IT staff, and we work with Userful. They have a great support staff out of their NOC, and every time we've needed a particular feature or something that we couldn't figure out ourselves, they've been there to help us, and they literally get into our systems with our approvals and everything, and they're able to help out, and it's very fast. So that lean methodology is definitely in practice and working well.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, certainly on that point, I mean, that sort of global management and support thing is one of those key things. By ensuring you've got the tools so that your own customers can support things globally, obviously within their security parameters and with their permission, the manufacturer can also go and take care of that support globally as well. And so that we use the same tools that our customers use in that way, and through them able to sort of log in and get into servers. Any server anywhere. I'm just checking my watch, thinking how close we are to wanting to hear questions that you guys might have. one of the things that I wanted to touch on just at the end is this question of point solution versus visual networking platform. So here at Userful, we often talk about the visual networking platform. So a single solution able to address all sorts of needs. I think in case of Suffolk, we're using it, for very specific needs, although you've got so many different things going on within that. But our point certainly is that you get started as an integrator or as a manufacturer with a customer with one solution for a particular need, and as they see what your solution can do, as they see what Userful can do, you can grow it within that. And so, it might start out being a video wall in a lobby just to welcome customers, then they quickly realize, well, we can do customer demos with this as well, then start doing that, and then carry it on and say, well, this will also work in our operations center in the back where we're keeping an eye on the network and the NOC, and grow things from there. So with that having been said, let's do the same thing, and then we'll turn it over to questions. Do you want to talk about how, sort of starting with a point solution and then growing it a single platform and able to do many things within the enterprise? And then, Ajoy, do you want to share your thoughts on that as well?
That's what I was talking about earlier, saying, you don't want to do it all on day one. You don't want,
Right.
But you have to start small, and you have to get people to feel comfortable. You have to get the internal organization understanding the rhythm, what they're doing. The content is king. I say that to everyone. If you're not going to be committed to creating content or have a strategy on what you're going to fill in far as operational KPIs and other things, don't do it. Just don't make the investment in a video wall, because you're not going to be happy. At the end of the day, you're not going to be happy with me, because you're going to think I didn't provide you with the solution that you wanted. So we talked to them quite a bit. It's okay, start simple, but make sure you have a plan to add on. And one of the great things, like Ajoy, they had a vision. When they were looking at the innovation, a lot of customers don't have that type of vision. They had a vision and say, look, we're going to create a transformational space. When people walk into Suffolk, they're going to know they're in a leading edge construction company. So they had that strategy, and it was very easy to do that and add the elements to go forward to where they are today. So it's creating a strategy, starting simple. Don't settle on point per point. There's no need to do that anymore, and then go forward.
Yeah.
I'll add to that. So our journey, you're absolutely right. We started off with, we had this idea, this vision. We created that, and we push technology to the limits, and that's part of the way I'm wired to. And so once I had this technology, I'm like, okay, what else can I do with it? Right? And like, okay, can I present from a laptop? Can I do wireless? Can I bring virtual reality into this? So we continuously do that. If you look at some of those pictures I showed you earlier, how we segregate those monitors into different ways, that sometimes keeping aspect ratios and all that, it gets a little clunky, but we are able to do it. And we do that because we push the system to the limits, and we continuously do that.
Yeah. Great. All right, with that said, we have a few minutes here for questions and answers. Just stand up and shout it out. And is there a mic there? Great.
There's a mic, and
It's on.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Great presentation. I think I'm an integrator, and the biggest challenge is content, the most important thing in video walls. So my question would be maybe on the integration side. First, where do you steer the customer for content, 3D, rendering, that type of thing? How do you support it? Do you build it? Where does it come from? How do you get there?
So that's part of the conversation after early on about, what is it that do you have an internal marketing group? You already have. A lot of people have a whole library of content, they're just not leveraging. So how do you leverage your existing content you have? We don't create content. We're not graphics artists. We've talked about it. Is that something we want to get into? But we do partner with some people. And if they're uncomfortable doing it, we will partner with some people. But it's the biggest challenge, to get them to be thinking out of the box and how they do. One of the things that we have done is we have partnered with a software developer that created social networking that screen scrapes the customers or any customers, any content, social media, so it's constantly feeding it so they don't have to do that. And they run that during the day, and it shows up, and it spills across, and there's images. So it's a low thought content manager for them. But that was the decision that we made early on when we were doing this, but now we're going to the next level saying we need to be more proactive with that. But content is king, and you really need to have an understanding for the customer what their capabilities are, and then partner them with someone that can provide that if they don't or are uncomfortable with it. But also let them know the cost up front. Yeah. Worst thing is then they get connected and they say, well, we can't afford to keep that. You know, we're against getting people boxed in and giving them a solution and then not getting the leverage out of it.
I want to build off something you were saying there, John, because I think that the point's a really good one. That, you know, we used to think about video walls as it's a video, so you're going to have to go get a production company to shoot some video, and then you got to keep that fresh and redo it all the time. And I think your point about the customer that's screen scraping stuff around social media is a really good one. What we see more and more is companies that are pulling content from a variety of sources and putting them up and having something that's self-fulfilling in that way. So you don't need to brainstorm and hire somebody and, you know, create new content every month. And from Userful's perspective, that's one of the things we allow you to do is just choose different sources and you can schedule them. So you can change from a full screen browser that is just your YouTube playlist, switch it over to pull something from social media, switch it over to play a video, and you can schedule all that. And so it can be a much more organic kind of thing that isn't, okay, we've got to hire a production company every month to do some new content, but instead, and you've really got to have, as John says, have this conversation up front about what they're going to do, but you can really pull up different sources from, you know, capturing something from a desktop, capturing something from a PowerPoint, but you can also capture something from real-time content that's being created online. So pull up a full-screen web browser, put content through there. So the stuff that you can pull from different sources allows you a lot more creativity and flexibility, and so it doesn't need to be just, oh, let's make another video.
I'll add to that, if you know, we want to think about, you know, you have that vision, because you saw in an earlier slide their solution supports 8K. When we first started, we said, okay, let's think about what content and all that, and suddenly we realized, you know, this is an innovation lab. We don't want it to turn into a museum. So content has to be, it's critical because it has to be refreshed, it has to be current, right? What ended up happening, actually, we started realizing that it's not just the video wall. Now we have to invest in camera technology, better, you know, things that you have to think about. You know, and we talk about TCO, the total cost of ownership. That's all part of it. And you know, but it's kind of one technology is pushing the limits on the others. So, but that's very critical, keeping the content refreshed. You have to think about that.
Great question. Any other questions? Come on up to the mic.
Hello. Question is really, I guess I'm too close. Question is on leasing options or the service, video wall as a service. Could you elaborate on how this works and maybe challenges you're facing? Really, the question is mostly on the cost of technology continue to drop, right? And you know, naturally, the service, especially if the customer expectation is that they get the latest and greatest, it could be just, you know, monthly costs could be so significant if they expect you know, the newest gadget on their wall every couple of years. How do you face those challenges? And also, what's included in that service? Is that end-to-end, the hardware, maintenance, content, possibly? Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, we have spent a lot of time working on AV as a service and video walls in particular. So we do sit down and we create a pro forma with a term with them, but the equipment is actually owned by me. I own the equipment. If they come back in, one of the things they like about it is 2 years into it, they want flexibility, want to go from LCD to LED. We'll sit down and we'll have a monthly change to the fee. You know, it'll go up or down based upon what we are. I'll retake those assets, I'll redeploy them in some way, either to other customers, internally, or whatever. But we sit down and we have a whole pro forma to do that. It's a complete solution, because I own it, I'm responsible for making sure it's up and running every day. So maintenance is not a concern for them. I also need access though, so I need to be able to get my knock in to manage that wall, be able to see things are on or off. So it is, it's an area that we're all concerned about, how do we do this? But it is, I think, one of the biggest areas that we have to grow as a company, you know, to be able to do that. So we can talk more detail afterwards, but that's where like Userful too, coming in as part of monthly recurring helps to manage that.
And so,
Maybe a follow-up item. Do you see video collaboration technology, sort of leasing options as becoming more widespread in the industry? Do you see that trend as well?
Yes, I do. I mean, and I'm talking significant big projects. There's a big project that we just completed, over $5 million. We got all the way to the CIO to put it as a AV as a lease, so all the equipment in that project, which includes 7 video walls, I would own and manage. And believe it or not, it was the chief marketing officer that put a kibosh to it at the last minute, which I find amazing. But it is something that people are looking at because they're looking and saying, look, we're making this investment in 3 years. If I do a capital expenditure, it's still going to be on my books. I want to upgrade in 3 years, not 5 years, because that's their. And so I'm almost blocked in to keeping using the same technology in 5 years, and they know that their end users are not going to be demanding new technology in a much shorter time frame than that. So it's one of the selling points we talk to them about is, look, if you do this, you're building in flexibility, that you can now go ahead and make changes. So I didn't know this, didn't want to turn into an AV over AV as a service, but it is very linked to how you go to market and how we sell service.
It's an interesting point because I haven't talked about what the other thing so Userful has 2 solutions: on-premise, where you've got the PC on site, and then Userful Cloud, which is an AV as a service option. There's no hardware involved, so we go direct to the smart display and cut out the server on site, and that is allows you to do. You can still do real-time content through a browser. You can do video on it. You can connect local AV sources. It doesn't have quite the flexibility of the on-premise version that Ajoy has deployed, but you do get to cut out the hardware, and then it is a subscription cost as well. So this sort of ties into, I think, we see the same thing going on in the market, and the move certainly within the enterprise to wanting to move something to operational instead of on capital expense. And so having the subscription offering with a hardware-free video walls certainly, been a, we launched it this year. It's been a great success so far, and I think that's certainly part of what appeals to the movement towards subscription and away from capital expense. Do you have comments on that as well?
I think all good points. We are starting to look at video walls as a service. We've invested in quite a lot. We have looked at the Userful Cloud option. We are using that as well. So there are 2 sides to it. One is the platform that runs the content, and then the actual hardware. So there is a refresh cycle on the hardware. When we come up on that, that's something that we're considering.
9:30.
Okay. So it is 9:30, so we're, I think, supposed to wrap up. Was there any other quick questions?
I just had a really quick question, actually, for Red Thread. Sorry, Userful.
No, that's all right. This will keep it quick.
But I was just wondering what made you go with the Userful solution over something other AV over IP like Hyperwall or something like that for this use case?
It met the user requirement, what they wanted for the ability to have flexibility, central management, all the selling points that they talked about. We felt that it was the right solution for Suffolk. So it's pretty simple. Well,
good answer.
Right.
Yeah.
No, well, thank you very much. Appreciate you all coming.
Thank you. If there's any other questions, come on up and grab us, but we got to wrap up.